Welcome to the deep dive. You know how normally when you get a compliment, it feels like this little burst of sunshine?
Oh, yeah, like a classic dopamine hit.
Exactly.
Right.
You finish a massive project, your boss says, hey, great job, and it's just this clean, validating social transaction.
Right, because you put in the effort, they recognized it, and you walk away feeling totally energized.
Yeah.
It's the standard feedback loop we're all taught to expect, really, from a very young age.
Good behavior equals positive reinforcement.
Yeah, exactly. The transaction is visible, it's easy to categorize, and, well, it generally just makes everyone feel good.
But occasionally you step into a totally different kind of territory.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a time you received a compliment from a boss, or maybe like a teacher back in the day, that didn't feel like sunshine at all.
Oh, I know the exact feeling you're talking about.
Right. Instead, it felt incredibly heavy. It's the kind of praise that makes you feel strangely unseen or even physically exhausted the second the words leave their mouth.
Yeah, the kind of praise that feels way less like a genuine celebration of your work and more like um, a subtle set of instructions.
Yes. Instructions on how you are permanently expected to behave going forward.
Exactly.
Well, that exact feeling, that heavy, exhausting praise, is what we are decoding today. Our mission is to look at the hidden and, frankly, often damaging subtext behind the everyday praise we receive at work and in school.
And we have some really phenomenal source material for this.
We do. We're looking at a profoundly thought-provoking excerpt from a Substack by Jaime Hoerricks, Ph.D. It's titled, Reading Between Worlds, The Social Reward of Suppression.
It's such a powerful piece.
It really is. Hoerricks explores this deeply ingrained societal habit, basically how we constantly confuse a person's adaptation and their palatability with actual genuine success.
Right, and while this dynamic can totally apply to anyone navigating a strict hierarchy, the text specifically focuses on the experiences of neurodivergent adults.
People operating within systems that, just were not built for them. Okay, let's unpack this, because Hoerricks starts by completely dismantling the basic assumption we all have that every compliment is inherently a good thing.
Yeah, the text notes that while the author remains broadly in favor of being admired, which is a great caveat, by the way, there is a specific category of institutional compliment that literally requires a risk assessment.
Wait, a risk assessment just for a compliment?
I know, it sounds intense.
It completely flips the script. I mean, we usually reserve risk assessments for financial investments, right? Or like workplace safety hazards.
Exactly. So applying it to praise tells you immediately that these words carry hidden liabilities.
So how do we spot them?
Well, Hoerricks pinpoints exactly how to identify these risky compliments. They're described as warm, approving, and almost always delivered with what the text brilliantly calls the faint scent of managerial relief.
The faint scent of managerial relief.
Wow. What's fascinating here is the psychology behind that specific kind of relief. I mean, think about what a manager or a teacher or a care coordinator is ultimately tasked with doing every single day.
They're managing finite resources.
Right. Tight schedules, complex personalities. Their baseline state is often one of really high friction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when they offer this specific brand of praise, they're unknowingly shifting the value of the compliment completely away from the individual's actual achievement.
Oh, wow. So what is the value based on then?
It's based entirely on the comfort of the person giving the praise.
Okay, I see. So the relief is simply the manager thinking, thank goodness this person is not a problem I have to solve today.
Exactly that.
It's like a blinking check engine light on your dashboard, right?
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
When that light comes on, it's incredibly stressful. It means something underlying needs attention, it needs support, it needs fixing.
Yeah, it's friction in your day.
Right. So imagine you take your car to a mechanic, and instead of actually opening the hood and looking at the engine, the mechanic just reaches under the dashboard and, snips the wire connecting to the light.
Just cuts the wire.
Just cuts it. The light goes off. The mechanic wipes his hands, sighs with relief, and says, wow, this car is running perfectly now. So low maintenance.
And the mechanic is immensely relieved because the visual indicator of the problem is just gone. The friction has been removed from their day.
But the actual engine hasn't been fixed at all.
No, it's still running hot. It's still burning up. The praise, that whole you're so low maintenance compliment, is just gratitude that you aren't actively being a problem for the institution.
The burden of the broken engine has been left entirely on you, the driver.
Exactly. And the real danger here is that if you accept that praise without doing the risk assessment Hoerricks suggests, You might convince yourself that because the mechanic is happy, the car must be fine.
Oh, man. You internalize their relief as your own success.
Yeah, you really do. And if these compliments are just tools for managerial relief, it makes sense to look at where they happen most often.
Where do we see this the most?
Well, Hoerricks explicitly names a trio of environments: schools, workplaces, and care systems.
Interesting. Schools, workplaces, care systems.
Yeah, these three specific environments share a common structural DNA. They involve massive power imbalances, and they're designed to process huge groups of human beings as efficiently as possible through a really rigid set of expectations.
So what does this all mean? Like, are these institutions deliberately malicious? Or are they just vast machines that inherently prioritize palatability over human well-being? I mean, think about it from the institution's perspective.
Right, running at scale.
Yeah. If you were running a school with 1,000 kids or a corporation with 500 employees, the system literally cannot cater to 500 bespoke emotional needs. Isn't this demand for conformity just an unavoidable math problem?
That is the core defense of these systems, actually. And it really highlights the tragedy of the dynamic. You're pointing out that these institutions aren't necessarily malicious.
There's no board of directors twirling their mustaches.
Right. They aren't plotting to suppress individuality in some dark room. They are just vast, complex machines. And like any machine running at scale, they inherently prioritize the path of least resistance.
They require palatability just to function.
Exactly. If an employee is palatable, meaning they're easily digestible, pleasant, causing no friction, it just means the institution doesn't have to stretch its finite resources to accommodate them.
And within those rigid structures, Hoerricks highlights how neurodivergent adults are specifically targeted by this dynamic. The text asserts that these systems heavily reward those who are, quote, easiest to read, easiest to use, and least disruptive to institutional comfort.
Easiest to use.
Calling a human being easiest to use is just such a stark way to describe how we reduce complex lives to a metric of utility.
It's chilling, honestly. For neurodivergent adults who might naturally process information or socialize or regulate their environments completely differently than the neurotypical majority, navigating these spaces requires an immense cognitive effort.
Right, what's often known as masking.
Yeah, masking. And to non-neurodivergent listeners, masking might just sound like, being polite or acting professional, but the mechanism is entirely different.
It's not just manners.
No, it's a constant manual override of natural instincts.
It's like running a really heavy background program on your computer while you're trying to do your actual work. You're constantly monitoring your tone of voice, making sure you make the exact right amount of eye contact.
Suppressing physical needs to move or stim.
Exactly. And constantly analyzing the neurotypical social cues all around you.
The energy expenditure is massive. I mean, you are essentially translating your entire personality in real time just to appear easy to read and least disruptive.
And because the machine functions smoothly, when people suppress their needs this way, we as a society have collectively decided to label this exact brand of institutional palatability as success.
We put it on performance reviews.
We hand out awards for it. But then, as Hoerricks points out, we act completely bewildered when we see highly competent people just completely collapse inside it.
Yeah, we wonder why the burnout rate is so high, or why someone who seemed completely fine suddenly hits a wall and just cannot function.
Because we mistook their incredibly costly adaptation for genuine success.
We praise them for holding their breath, and then we're totally shocked when they eventually pass out.
Wow.
The collapse isn't a sudden failure, It's the inevitable physiological and psychological result of long-term suppression.
Yeah.
The cognitive debt finally comes due.
That is so heavy, which brings us to the actual vocabulary of suppression.
Yeah.
Like, how does this sound in practice? Because the institutions don't walk up to you and say, hey, thank you for absorbing all this institutional friction so I can comfortably manage at scale.
No, they definitely don't say that.
They use a very specific, seemingly positive language. Hoerricks provides several examples of these compliments, and if we break a few of them down, the subtext becomes impossible to ignore.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with a classic. You're so easy to work with.
Oh, yeah. On the surface, that is the ultimate professional compliment. But in the context of this risk assessment, easy to work with often translates to you have loose boundaries.
Right.
It means when the project scope changes at the last minute, you don't push back. When the environment is chaotic or the processes are completely broken, You just figure it out yourself without demanding better resources.
You are easy because you are acting as a shock absorber for the system's dysfunction.
Exactly.
Okay, then there is this phrase which is often used in educational and care settings, but totally corporately too. She's very high functioning.
Ugh, that phrase is particularly insidious. I mean, functioning for whom?
Right.
When a system labels someone high functioning, they are usually evaluating how much that person's neurodivergence inconveniences the people around them.
It doesn't mean the person isn't struggling immensely.
Not at all. They could be dealing with severe sensory overload or crippling anxiety. It just means their struggles are completely internalized. They're invisible to the institution.
Which leads directly into the one that really reframes a core cultural concept for me. They're so resilient.
Oh, resilience.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We put resilience on a massive pedestal in our culture. We write best-selling business books about it. But viewing it through Hoerricks' lens, praising someone's resilience in an unsupportive environment is like looking at a load-bearing pillar in a decaying building.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy.
Imagine an old structure, right? The roof is incredibly heavy, it's starting to sag, and there's one central pillar taking all of the weight. It's groaning, there are microfractures forming in the concrete, but it hasn't snapped yet.
So praising the employee for being so resilient is like the architect walking up to that cracking pillar, patting it, and saying, "Look at how strong you are. You're doing a great job holding up this collapsing roof."
Yes. The fact that the pillar is holding it up doesn't mean the building is in good shape. It just means the pillar is absorbing all the structural damage, so the architect doesn't have to redesign the roof.
And by praising the pillar for its strength, the architect completely absolves themselves of the responsibility to actually fix the building. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is exactly how these seemingly positive phrases act as highly effective tools of isolation.
Tools of isolation.
Yeah. Take another phrase from the text. He doesn't need much support. When an institution labels a neurodivergent individual with that phrase, they are actively ensuring that this person will continue to not receive support.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Completely. Your competence, or really your ability to mask your struggle, effectively quarantines you from the help you desperately need.
So the reward for suffering quietly is that everyone agrees to leave you alone with your suffering.
Sadly, yes.
So if that's the mechanical reality of these compliments, what happens when someone finally learns to hear this subtext? Hoerricks provides a translation for what the manager's sigh of relief actually means when they say, "We never have to worry about you."
And the source material breaks it down to a really stark reality. The translation is, not you are well, not you are safe, not you are thriving.
Not you are well, not you are safe, not you are thriving. It just strips away all the polite, corporate, and educational jargon, doesn't it?
It really does. Underneath high functioning and easy to work with is just a void where actual human care should be. This raises an important question, actually. The text is forcing us to confront a massive, dangerous gap between functioning for the benefit of the system and thriving for the benefit of oneself.
Because they are two entirely different metrics.
Completely different.
The system measures wellness by a lack of friction. If you show up on time, if your spreadsheets are correct, if you don't cause a scene in the classroom, well, the system marks you as well. The institutional checklist is complete.
Right, you've checked the boxes.
But internal wellness, actually feeling safe, feeling energized, feeling like you have the capacity to grow, that requires an environment that allows you to be a whole, complex human being.
And this is the biological reality of the burnout we discussed earlier. When an individual relies on the institution's metric of wellness to judge their own state, they lose touch with their own internal signals.
Yeah, ignore their own exhaustion.
Yeah, because the external feedback says, hey, you're doing great. It's a really dangerous misalignment of data. It's like you're using a thermometer to check your car's oil. The tools just don't match the required measurement.
That perfectly encapsulates the tragedy of the Substack's title, doesn't it? The social reward of suppression.
Yeah, it really does.
The reward you get for burying your own needs, for running that exhausting masking software all day, for not asking for help, the reward is just more praise.
And that praise just encourages you to keep digging that hole and burying those needs even deeper.
You are caught in a loop where you literally get a ribbon for erasing yourself.
It creates an impossible double bind, because if you express your needs or if you drop the mask, you risk being labeled difficult or uncooperative or low functioning.
You lose the social reward.
Right, and you become a target for institutional friction. But on the flip side, if you suppress your needs to gain the praise and maintain your palatability, well, you lose yourself. You achieve the outward appearance of success while entirely sacrificing your psychological safety and your ability to truly thrive.
So synthesizing all of this from Hoerricks' work, the core shift in perspective is really about fundamentally rethinking the nature of praise in spaces governed by hierarchy.
Absolutely.
It's about recognizing that institutional comfort is almost always purchased using the currency of our personal well-being. The system feels good precisely because we're absorbing the friction.
And learning to read between the worlds, deciphering that gap between what institutions say and what their praise actually requires of you is a vital survival skill. Whether you identify as neurodivergent and have spent a lifetime masking to fit into these systems, or if you're simply navigating an incredibly demanding environment, you have to establish your own internal metrics for success. You just cannot rely on a system built for efficiency to accurately measure your humanity.
You really have to become your own mechanic. You can't just trust that because someone snipped the wire to your check engine light, your engine is fine.
No, you have to open the hood and look at the engine yourself.
And you have to be willing to advocate for the maintenance you actually need, even if it makes you slightly less easy to use for the institution.
Exactly.
Well, we're going to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, straight from the underlying challenge of this text. The next time you finish a grueling week, and someone in a position of power pats you on the back and praises you for being so resilient or for being so easy to work with, take a moment, pause and do the risk assessment, and ask yourself this one question. Whose comfort is your resilience actually serving today, yours or the institution's?